Let me ask you something strange. What if everything you believe about death is wrong? Not in a poetic way, not in a religious way, in a purely scientific, observable, provable way. Because here's what most people never stop to consider. The atoms that make up your body right now, the carbon in your bones, the iron in your blood, the oxygen moving through your lungs as you read this, none of them are new. They have been here for billions of years. They belong to stars, to ancient oceans, to creatures that walked this earth long before humans existed. And when you die, they will not disappear. They will simply move on. They will become something else. So here's the real question. If the stuff you are made of never dies, then what exactly is death? That question haunted some of the sharpest minds in human history, and the answers they found are not what most people expect. Let us start simple. Think about a flame. You light a candle. You watch it burn. It flickers. It moves. It almost seems alive. Now blow it out. Where did it go? The wax is still there. The air is still there. The heat dissolved into the room. Nothing actually vanished. The flame was never a thing. It was a process, a pattern of energy moving through matter. Now here is the uncomfortable thought. You are not so different from that flame. Your body is not a solid object sitting still in the world. It is a pattern, a flow. Right now your cells are dividing, dying, and being replaced. The lining of your stomach replaces itself every few days. Your skin sheds and rebuilds itself over weeks. The red blood cells in your veins today will be gone in a few months, replaced entirely by new ones. The body you had 10 years ago shares almost none of the same physical matter as the body you have now. And yet you still feel like you. That continuity, that feeling of being the same person across time, is not stored in any single atom. It is not locked in any one cell. It is the pattern itself, the information, the shape of how everything is organized and connected. This is where it gets genuinely fascinating. When a man gets older, and if you are over 50, you know exactly what this feels like. Things start to shift. Energy changes, recovery slows, sleep becomes different. The body does not respond the way it used to. And most men assume this is simply the machine breaking down, parts wearing out, the inevitable decline toward the end. But that framing might be completely wrong. What is actually happening is something more like this. Imagine a river. For decades, that river has been carving its path through rock and soil. The water is always new, always fresh, but the path it follows gets deeper and more defined over time. Your body at 50, 60, 70 is not a broken young body. It is a deeply carved river. It knows its path. It runs deep. The patterns are more established, not more ruined. The fatigue men feel is often not the body failing. It is the body communicating. It is signaling that the conditions it is operating under need to change, that the fuel it is being given does not match what it now requires, that the rest it is getting is not the quality of rest it needs, that the movement it is doing or not doing is no longer the right kind. Your body is extraordinary at adaptation. It has been doing it your entire life. The question is whether you are paying attention to what it is asking for. And this connects directly back to the big idea, because the men who live longest, who stay sharpest, who feel most alive well into their later decades, they are not the ones who fight their age. They are the ones who understand what their body is actually doing, who treat it like the intelligent, self-organizing system it is, not a car slowly running out of fuel, a living pattern that wants to keep going, as long as it is given what it needs to maintain itself. Here is a small thing most men over 50 get wrong every single day. They wake up, feel stiff, and think something is broken. But stiffness in the morning is almost never damage. It is your body asking for movement. The joints, the connective tissue, the circulatory system, they all need blood and fluid to move through them. When you sleep, that flow slows. When you wake, the body needs to redistribute. A 10-minute walk in the morning is not exercise, it is maintenance. It is keeping the river flowing so the path stays clear. Simple. Obvious. But most men reach for coffee instead of movement and wonder why they feel slow until noon. That is what this whole conversation is really about. Not death as a terrifying ending, but life as something far more interesting, more durable, and more resilient than you were ever taught to believe. What if I told you that your brain is lying to you? Not occasionally, not in small ways. Every single day, your brain constructs a version of reality that feels completely real, completely continuous, completely you, and yet it is built fresh, moment by moment, from electrical signals and chemical messages flying between billions of cells. There is no little person sitting inside your head watching a screen. There is no central location where you live. Scientists have looked. They have mapped the brain with extraordinary precision, and what they found is that consciousness, that feeling of being awake, aware, present, is not a thing. It is, again, a process, a pattern of activity, a conversation happening between different regions of your brain simultaneously. So when that pattern changes, what happens to you? Think about sleep. Every night you lose consciousness. The version of you that was aware, thinking, planning, worrying, it disappears. And yet every morning, something that feels exactly like you returns. With the same memories, the same preferences, the same slightly irrational feelings about Monday mornings. But here is what is strange. During deep sleep, there is no experience, no sense of time passing, no awareness at all. You go under, and then suddenly it is morning. Hours have vanished with zero subjective experience. From the inside, deep sleep and death look identical, and yet you come back. So what exactly is returning? The pattern, the information, the deeply encoded structure of who you are, your memories, your habits, your neural pathways carved by decades of experience. All of it persists in the physical structure of your brain, even while conscious experience temporarily shuts off. Now here is why this matters for men over 50 in the most practical possible way. Sleep changes as you age. This is not a mystery, and it is not random. The architecture of sleep shifts. The deep stages, the ones where your brain does its most important maintenance work, become shorter and lighter. And the consequences show up in ways men almost never connect to sleep. Slower thinking, mood that feels heavier than it should, joints that ache more than they used to, a memory that seems just slightly less sharp than it was 5 years ago. Here's what is actually happening during deep sleep that most people never learn. Your brain has a cleaning system. It runs primarily at night. Fluid moves through channels in your brain tissue, washing out the metabolic waste that accumulates during the day, the byproducts of all that thinking and processing. If this cleaning cycle gets cut short night after night, that waste builds up, and the brain begins to work less efficiently, the way any space becomes harder to function in when it stops getting cleaned. So the man who is sleeping 6 hours and calling it fine is not just tired. He is slowly allowing his most important organ to run without maintenance. The practical fix is simpler than most men expect. The single biggest disruptor of deep sleep in men over 50 is not stress, not screens, not caffeine, although all of those matter. It is body temperature. Your brain needs your core temperature to drop slightly to initiate and maintain deep sleep. And most men are unknowingly keeping themselves too warm. Heavy blankets, warm rooms, a hot shower right before bed. These all delay or reduce the quality of deep sleep. Try this instead. Keep the bedroom cool. Somewhere between 60 and 67 degrees is where most people sleep best. Take a warm shower about 90 minutes before bed, not right before. This seems counterintuitive, but the warming of your skin actually draws heat away from your core, and the temperature drop that follows signals the brain that it is time to shift into deep sleep. Small change, significant difference. Now let us go back to the bigger question, because this is where it gets genuinely interesting. If you are not your atoms, since those are constantly replaced, and you are not your conscious experience, since that disappears every night and returns, then what are you? You are the pattern that persists through all of it. You are the accumulated information of your entire life, the memories, the learned responses, the relationships, the skills built over decades, the particular way your neural networks have been shaped by everything you have ever seen, done, felt, and survived. And here is what physics tells us about information. Information is extraordinarily difficult to destroy. When you burn a piece of paper, the paper seems to disappear, but the atoms do not vanish. The energy does not vanish. And theoretically, if you could track every single particle involved in that process, you could reconstruct exactly what the paper said. The information is transformed, redistributed, encoded in the state of the universe around it. Your pattern, the thing that makes you you, works the same way. This is not wishful thinking. This is not philosophy reaching for comfort. This is what the actual structure of reality suggests when you follow the logic honestly and without flinching. The universe does not seem to be in the business of destroying information. It transforms it, redistributes it, carries it forward in forms we do not always recognize. And the man who understands this, really understands it, not just as an idea, but as something he has genuinely sat with, tends to live differently. He worries less about the clock running out and pays more attention to the quality of the pattern he is building right now. Because the pattern is what persists, and you are still building it. Here is something that will change the way you look at your own body. Right now, inside you, there are approximately 37 trillion cells. Each one is doing something, communicating, processing, responding. Each one is, in its own way, alive, and each one will die, most of them many times over within your lifetime. In fact, the vast majority of your cells are replaced so regularly that death is not the exception inside your body. It is the standard operating procedure. Your body runs on death, not in a dark way, in a deeply functional, intelligent way. The process is called apoptosis, and it is one of the most elegant things biology has ever figured out. When a cell has done its job, or when it starts behaving in ways that could harm the larger system, it receives a signal, and it destroys itself, quietly, efficiently, without inflammation, without damage to surrounding tissue. It simply dissolves itself back into raw materials that the body can use again. This is not failure. This is the system working exactly as designed. Think about it this way. Imagine a city. Buildings get old. Infrastructure wears out. If the city never tore anything down and rebuilt, it would eventually become a place where nothing worked properly. The streets would be clogged. The wiring would be dangerous. The whole system would slowly grind toward dysfunction. But a well-run city is always in the process of renewal, tearing down what no longer serves, rebuilding stronger and more efficient in its place. Your body is that city, and it has been managing this process brilliantly for your entire life. The problem that emerges as men age, particularly past 50, is not that the body forgets how to do this. The problem is that the conditions required for this process to work well start to deteriorate, and the main culprit is something most men completely underestimate: chronic low-grade inflammation. Not the acute inflammation you feel when you cut your finger and the area swells up and heals. That kind is useful. That is your immune system doing exactly what it should. The kind that causes problems is the quiet, persistent, background-level inflammation that hums along silently for years without any obvious symptoms. You do not feel it the way you feel a headache, but it is there, and it gradually interferes with the very cellular renewal process that keeps your body functioning at its best. It disrupts the signals that tell old cells when to step aside. It slows the regeneration of new, healthy tissue. It makes the whole maintenance system less precise, less efficient, less responsive. The result shows up as the things men chalk up to simply getting older: joints that stay sore longer than they should, energy that never quite recovers after a hard week, a mental sharpness that feels slightly blunted compared to 10 years ago, muscle that takes longer to build and seems to disappear faster. These are not inevitable. They are symptoms of a system under unnecessary strain. So what actually drives this chronic inflammation in men over 50? 3 things, more than almost anything else. The first is food that spikes blood sugar repeatedly throughout the day. Every time blood sugar rises sharply and then crashes, the body mounts a mild inflammatory response. Do this 3, 4, 5 times a day with the wrong foods, and that inflammation never fully clears between cycles. The fix is not complicated. It is not about eliminating entire food groups or following rigid rules. It is simply about slowing the release of sugar into your bloodstream, eating protein before carbohydrates at a meal, adding fat or fiber to foods that would otherwise hit your blood sugar fast, taking a 10-minute walk after eating, which causes your muscles to absorb glucose directly and dramatically flattens the spike. Simple, practical, immediately effective. The second driver is carrying excess fat around the abdomen. This is not just extra weight sitting passively. Visceral fat, the fat that accumulates deep in the abdominal cavity around the organs, is metabolically active. It produces inflammatory compounds continuously. The more of it you carry, the higher your baseline inflammation. And the cruel irony is that chronic inflammation itself makes it harder to lose that fat, because it disrupts the hormonal signals that regulate metabolism and hunger. But here is what men get wrong about this. They think the solution is to exercise harder, to punish the fat away. And while movement absolutely matters, the research is clear that diet accounts for far more of visceral fat reduction than exercise does. You cannot out-train a pattern of eating that keeps insulin elevated most of the day. The third driver is something even more overlooked: isolation. This one surprises people. But the connection between social connection and inflammation in the body is one of the most robust findings in all of health science. Men who feel chronically lonely or disconnected show measurably higher levels of inflammatory markers in their blood. The body treats social isolation as a threat, as a danger signal, and it responds by ramping up the same inflammatory systems that were designed to protect you from physical harm. For men over 50, this is particularly significant because this is exactly the life stage where social connection tends to quietly erode. road, careers wind down, children leave, friendships that were built around shared circumstances slowly drift apart, and many men, conditioned their entire lives to be self-sufficient, do not even notice the gap until it has been there for years. The answer is not complicated, but it requires intention. It means choosing activities that put you in regular contact with other people, not just occasional contact, regular, repeated, face-to-face contact. A walking group, a sport you play weekly, a class you attend consistently. The specific activity matters far less than the regularity and the presence of other humans you actually interact with. Your body is listening to all of this, to what you eat, to how you move, to who you spend time with, and it responds accordingly, not someday, now, continuously. The pattern that you are, the living, self-renewing, extraordinarily complex system running inside you, is shaped every single day by these inputs. And unlike the things you cannot control, these are entirely in your hands. So let us bring this all the way back to where we started. Death is an illusion. Not because nothing ends. Things end. Cells die. Patterns shift. The particular arrangement of matter and energy that you recognize as yourself will one day reorganize into something else. That part is real. That part is certain. But here is what is also real. Energy does not disappear. Information does not vanish. The atoms that built you were here long before you arrived, and they will be here long after you leave. And the patterns you created, the relationships you shaped, the memories you left in other people's nervous systems, the ideas you passed forward, the small daily acts that influence the world around you, those do not simply stop when your heart does. They continue, in different forms, through different channels, but they continue. This is not a comforting story invented to make death easier to face. This is what the actual structure of the universe appears to be doing, continuously transforming, continuously redistributing, never truly losing anything, only changing the form in which it exists. And once a man genuinely understands this, not just as an interesting thought but as something he has actually absorbed, something shifts in how he lives. The anxiety about time running out softens, not because he stops caring about life, but because he starts caring about it differently, more precisely, with less panic and more presence. He stops spending energy defending against the idea of death and starts putting that energy into the quality of the pattern he is building right now, today, in the choices he makes before noon. And this, oddly enough, is where the most practical health advice connects to the deepest philosophical idea. Because the men who age best, who stay sharp, who stay strong, who stay genuinely engaged with life well into their 70s and 80s, are almost never the ones who are desperately fighting time. They are the ones who made peace with time, and then chose, quietly and consistently, to use it well. What does that look like in real daily life? It looks like moving in the morning, even when you do not feel like it. Not because you are punishing yourself toward some ideal body, but because movement is how the pattern maintains itself. Fluid moves through joints. Blood carries oxygen to tissue that needs it. The lymphatic system clears waste. 10 minutes of walking after waking is not a small thing. It is the body doing what it has always known how to do, given the chance. It looks like eating in a way that keeps your blood sugar stable across the day, not obsessively, not with rigid rules that make meals a source of stress, simply with awareness. Protein in the morning rather than sugar, meals that satisfy rather than spike, a walk after eating when you can manage it. These are not sacrifices. They are the conditions under which your body runs clean. It looks like sleeping as though it matters, because it does. Keeping the room cool, going to bed and waking at consistent times, even on weekends, treating sleep not as the leftover time after everything else is done, but as the foundation everything else is built on. The brain cleans itself at night, memory consolidates, hormones reset, the entire system prepares for another day of being alive. Shortchanging sleep is not a productivity strategy. It is borrowing against a debt that always comes due. It looks like staying connected to other people in ways that are regular and real, not performative, not obligatory, genuinely present, a friend you speak to honestly, a group you belong to and show up for, a purpose that pulls you into contact with the world outside your own head. These are not luxuries for men over 50. They are biological necessities. Your nervous system was built for connection. It does not function well without it. And it looks like curiosity. This one is perhaps the most underrated of all. Men who stay mentally sharp as they age tend to share one consistent trait. They remain genuinely curious about things. They ask questions. They learn new skills, not because they need them professionally, but because the act of learning itself keeps the brain building new connections, maintaining flexibility, staying alive in the deepest sense of the word. Curiosity is not a personality type. It is a practice. And like every practice, it strengthens with use. Here is the final thought, and it is the most important one. You are not a body that has a life. You are a living pattern that expresses itself through a body. And that pattern, the accumulated weight of everything you have experienced, learned, loved, and built, is genuinely remarkable. Not because it is perfect, but because it is irreplaceable. There has never been another configuration of matter and energy exactly like you, and there never will be again. That is not a small thing. That is, in fact, everything. So the question worth sitting with is not, when does this end? The question worth sitting with is, what are you doing with the pattern right now while you are here to shape it? Because every single day, you are still building it. And the universe, as best we can tell, is paying very close attention.